Hello and welcome to Random Offense, where we explore the intersection of sports, culture, sometimes even politics. We are joined by Tom Haberstroh of Yahoo Sports, my guy, a brilliant guy, my go-to guy on the sordid world of illegal NBA gambling. I can't wait to talk with him. We've got a range of issues that I find fascinating, and I believe you'll find fascinating. Oh, and by the way, you can come in and ask questions if you want. We can bring you up to the stage. Please try to stay on topic, but honestly, I have no way to punish you if you're off topic. But speaking of gambling, is everything gambling? That's a question I was asked by my friend and financial advisor, Rob. He asked it to me because he was sharing the Polymarket odds of whether that Coldplay couple, those cheaters, were going to get divorced. Apparently, right now on Polymarket, that bet, it's under the title Astronomer Divorce Parlay, is at 23% as to whether both parties, both people you saw there, would get divorced from their respective partners. And 23% makes sense. If I was using something like a sports book, I'd probably get worse odds because sports books like to take advantage of joined bets. Because in our minds, there's some sort of logical fallacy where we have two outcomes and it seems more likely to us than is actually so. And that's something that the sports books take a lot of advantage of. And hey, I'm not saying that this should be banned, but it seems bad. It's yet another example of how everything we collectively experience has some sort of cynical, derivative side to it. It seems like we are less experiencing life than consuming it at a desensitized remove and then trying to ramp the dopamine back up by now gambling on it. So that's one of the reasons I'm having Tom on. He can, for whatever reason, make me feel better about modern life through his research, through his study. A great example of this, a great example. He wrote this viral article on how NBA players are in a better way these days because they are procuring sex through apps versus the drunken nightclub experience. So let's start bringing Tom on because I want to start by talking about a story, a twisting, winding, curving story about potential NBA gambling and this just subject right now where it seems to pop up every now and again that players might be betting on games and it doesn't even seem to be a top news story out there. So Tom, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. I did not realize that we were going to talk about the Tinderization of the NBA, the story that I wrote about at ESPN, which was, I think, my favorite story I've ever written, because it involves all of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll about the NBA life, and it all combines it into that thing. But this one that I just reported on obsessively, exhaustingly, for Pablo Torre Finds Out, for his YouTube show. This one is right up there, man. Like this Malik Beasley investigation that we did. It involves Larsa Pippen, who Scottie Pippen's ex-wife.
Mm-hmm.
It involves a legless, homeless woman who
Of course.
pops up into this story. Nicolas Cage,
Of
the New
course.
York Knicks Dante DiVincenzo shot.
Mm-hmm.
An animal, the moose, a moose,
Yeah.
a moose footprints, moose tracks. We're going all over this, all over the map on this story, and it was um a lot of scrolling through social media and mindlessly trying to track and research and just scale all of these mountains of data to
Yeah.
try to get to the bottom of this story. And it is an ongoing story, Ethan. Like this federal investigation into NBA players is open. It's an open investigation. Two players right now: Terry
Mm.
Rozier for the Miami Heat and Malik Beasley, who is not signed by anyone. We'll talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a live wire, a live story
Yeah.
that we're all trying to figure out.
Well, there's a lot there. There are two main questions. One is, did Malik Beasley gamble on games? And two is, how did a random guy on Twitter under the alias Moose know about it ahead of time? And I would highly recommend the Pablo Finds Out episode with Pablo Torre our friend Amin El Hassan. We were talking about golf earlier. I actually listened to this episode, Tom. I was at the driving range. I'm going to show you a little something. I was listening to it, and so lost in thought was I. I don't know if we're going to get a proper view of this on the camera, but you see the blood right there? I was bleeding, unbeknownst to me, completely engrossed in this. I guess I ripped off a callus. I don't know. I guess I'm just too powerful, Tom. Too much power, injuring myself, but it spoke to what an engrossing episode it was.
Not my
And
tempo. You're from what's it called? The movie with why am I blanking on the name? The one that Kyrie Irving loves, where
Uncut
um
Gems?
no. The one with
I
the
know what you're
dude.
talking about.
Uh this is so bad. This is
This is
dad
great
brain right here.
radio, great
Uh
podcast, great YouTube.
it's
It's all
the
of the
it's
things.
it's the one with the dude from Top Gun Maverick, who's oh my God, he's the drummer and he's trying to get the right, and the guy's yelling at him.
Oh,
Not
Whiplash. The NBA players love
Whiplash.
Whiplash. Kobe Bryant loves Whiplash. Yeah, he's drumming so hard the blood's coming out of
He's
his
bleeding
knuckles.
everywhere, and that's you.
Yeah.
You were so locked in on this
Mm.
episode that you didn't even realize. Oh my God, I have an open wound on my
Yeah,
left
I'm
hand.
just bleeding all over my glove in front of these people. I saw an old man staring at me because the blood, I will say, people, I'm not trying to brag. I know we're getting derailed. It looks bloodier before it dries and starts to oxidize and get brown. But look, let's get back to the topic at hand. Let's talk about this subject because here's what I'm saying about it. Okay, two things. First thing number one, you told me between us that this was an article that did so well for you, more so than the social media footprint. So there's some sort of everybody wants to know, but people don't necessarily want to talk about it. There's a conflict of interest in the sports media world and in the media right now. Everybody, nearly everybody, not me, at least yet, although I reserve the option if I do go broke enough, they're entangled with the gambling companies. And I don't think they want to talk about this. I know you said on the podcast that there's an affiliation with Pablo and might have been FanDuel or something, and they gave their say so and they want things to be clean. But this is something people think about and worry about. And the integrity of the game, that's another aspect of it. I don't think people in our industry, Tom, feel comfortable talking about this. But when you start talking about it and people are wondering whether 3-point sharpshooter Malik Beasley is doing stuff out there to change the outcomes because people have action on the game, everybody wants to know. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say the Substack piece that I wrote in the moments after this news drops on June 29th. It's the day before free agency. Malik Beasley is about to become a free agent, and as I reported, and Shams Charania reported from ESPN at when the news was breaking, Malik Beasley was about to make $42 million with the
Yeah.
Detroit Pistons, and then poof, it all goes away because the federal investigation is announced through ESPN. Shams Charania is breaking the news that the Eastern District of New York is opening an investigation to alleged gambling improprieties with Malik Beasley. And so he doesn't see that money. And in fact, the Detroit Pistons have to pivot in the moments they're panicking. They're like,
Yeah.
we can't sign Malik Beasley. We got to go get Karis LeVert and trade for Duncan Robinson. And when that happened, I quickly wrote 5 thoughts, like 5 things that I had thought about and just researched about this story. Breaking news, get it out. And that was the most trafficked and most subscriptions that I had sold on a piece all year,
Mm.
was in those opening moments, the minutes after that story broke. And you've had that experience where
Yeah.
when a big story breaks, you kind of want to tail that excitement, that I need to know, I need to find out what's going on here. And that let me know something is like, there's this real gap in the sports media market right now regards to gambling stories because everyone is intertwined in some way, whether it's
Yeah.
directly they're getting money from sports books, whether it's
Yeah.
FanDuel or DraftKings, what have you, or they're like 2 degrees away from it, or they want a job that potentially could be sponsored by one of these sports books. So I understand why an entanglement that is a sensitive topic. And so the other thing I noticed, to what your point you mentioned earlier, is it didn't get a lot of social media buzz
Mm,
because in some ways, if you're sharing that, you're almost telling people that this is,
a big
something worth
deal.
reading about, and it might, you know,
Yeah.
uh, rub people the wrong way, that or your employers or whatnot.
Yeah,
So
if you're working for ESPN, which is a partner of the NBA and spends billions of dollars to transmit the sport, and you're going, this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. Well, it's a huge deal. Why is it a huge deal? Because it cuts to the integrity of the game, which is something that they're worried about at the NBA. So there's a little bit of hear no evil, see no evil. And Trace, if you could maybe pull up one of the viral Malik Beasley plays that, and you pointed this out on the podcast, it's not cut and dried as to whether he was doing this to get the total under the spread. But let's just see this play, because a lot of people are talking about this as being a strange one. Do we have that? Spread was 8.5. Beasley has the ball.
Beasley's going to get it left. One last shot. How about Beasley? 21 points.
I mean, it looks bad. It looks bad. It's not completely damning, but it doesn't look good. So people are talking about that. There are two conversations. It's bifurcated, as Tom is indicating. A lot of people, a lot of fans, people in the NBA world are all talking about that and going, oh my God, was this guy gambling on games? What the hell is happening here? How many other guys are doing this? And then at the major outlets, it's, oh, so free agency, we got, what do we got going on? LeBron, is he mad at the Lakers? I don't know, So eventually they do cover it. They have to cover when there's the investigation, but yeah, Tom, there's more subterranean interest in this than out in the open interest.
yeah, and that play right there was interesting because that basket by Malik Beasley in a game that was pretty much over. They were down by 10 points, 9 points. It flipped from the Clippers covering to the Minnesota Timberwolves covering, right?
Yeah.
Covering the spread. So when that gets 14 million views on Twitter, on X, people, most of the comments were, oh, he's 100% going to jail, right? Because obviously he's betting on that game. Why else would he be making that layup? And to which Amin, Pablo, and I were like, it's not that simple, because if a player making a basket to go from 19 points to 21 points, which would have given him over 20 points, which matters to NBA players, if that is a crime, then everyone is a criminal in the NBA, because so many guys will just get meaningless buckets just because their contracts are tied to how much they score, how much they rebound, how much they dish out assists. So I can understand why people, after the fact, hindsight is 2020, is now that we know that he's open, he's under a federal investigation. Now it seems like everything he does is criminal, but that's not fair. Like that, if being on Shaqtin' a Fool, making a dumb play or a play that a mistake on a floor is now criminal activity, then we've got a real problem in sports. And so the rush to judgment, and Amin talked about this on the show on Pablo Torre Finds Out, is like, it is irresponsible to just like pull up a random clip of Malik Beasley and say, hey, he's totally guilty. Look at him make this dumb play. Ha ha ha. That's not how this works. And so when you look into the data, you find that Malik Beasley does this, whether the spread is within reach or not. He just goes and gets buckets. And you know this, covering the NBA.
Very smart of him to create that as a baseline activity for when he needs it. Very smart.
It's an alibi. You're saying this is an alibi. Oh, I just do this all the time, right?
Yeah, I didn't even think about how crafty. Well, that's something that I heard when I was at NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. People were talking to me about how, look, they've caught the guys who are dumb about it. What if there are guys who are smart about it and are getting money down and haven't been caught? Now, I don't know. I don't know if that's widespread. I suspect that it's almost impossible to get away with this for reasons that the gambling companies don't want to talk about. And it's this: you're kind of not allowed to win. All the advertising makes it seem like you're going to win. That's the appeal. You're going to have beautiful women on your arm, and you're just going to be flush with cash because you knew sports so well. But the people who do this professionally, they spend more time and energy getting the bets down than they do researching the bets.
Beards.
The weird truth about sports gambling It's a little like blackjack and card counting. You don't have to be a genius to beat the house. You have to do your homework. You've got to be dedicated. You need to have a baseline of intelligence. But if you treat it like a job, you're going to be able to beat the house. And so they have algorithmic efficiency to figure out who beat us. If you beat them by any amount that's significant in any way, they know immediately. And so that's one of the reasons you can't get away with this. And I would, if I was at rookie orientation in the NBA, I would pull these guys aside and say, don't do it. Do not do it. You will get caught. It will not work out. But I don't think they believe in it because they're now in this environment where it used to be so stigmatized. Any gambling, anything near sports, Pete Rose, get out of the Hall of Fame, you're banned. Now it's no stigma, sports ads everywhere. And I think a lot of these guys just passively receive the message that there's an angle here to play, and there's really no angle.
What's interesting about this Malik Beasley story is the message that it sends to all the NBA players is that the feds can open up an investigation and announce this the day before you get your big payday, and then you might be out of the league.
Interesting.
Think about that. Like the message that it sends that Malik Beasley was hours away from getting $42 million guaranteed to his name.
Yeah.
And this is not Terry Rozier, right? Terry Rozier in January was announced. He's a guard for the Miami Heat under contract for multiple years into the future. He already has his deal. And so when it's announced that he's under a federal investigation by the Eastern District of New York, he keeps playing. He keeps getting his checks. But what this Malik Beasley story, what's so fascinating to coaches, executives, reporters around the league, players, they see this as, oh, my bag can get evaporated like that. Mm-hmm. So that's why this story is so fascinating to me. Is it happened minutes before he was going to get to the other side. And there's something we reported on that has been reported on is Malik Beasley was underneath a lot of financial stress over the years. And we reported, we looked through court documents. There were some debts of up to $8 million that he was in debt over the years. And some of them have been settled and cleared, but a South River Capital, this financial firm that lends money to pro athletes, that's the principal business for them. They went after Malik Beasley for over $5 million because they loaned him a money that he did not pay back. His former agent, his NBA agent, Hazan Sports Management, was after him for over $2 million, according to the complaint that he had filed in the NBA playoffs when Malik Beasley is suiting up for the Detroit Pistons and going against the New York Knicks, like literally served this lawsuit while he was in the middle of the playoffs. And so it's tough because on one hand, Ethan, you're looking at this and being like, oh, this guy is financially very vulnerable. Because not only is he getting with these debts that he hadn't paid and people were coming after him and his checks were being garnished by a dentist for $26 some odd thousand. But the thing is, that doesn't mean he's guilty of manipulating NBA games. So you can be financially vulnerable or under a lot of stress from all these debts that you have. It doesn't mean that you're guilty. And so when we watch the film, the game tape, when we consider all of the debts that he had to these people, it doesn't paint the greatest picture of Malik Beasley, but that also doesn't mean that he's guilty in this sense.
Tom, I love you. As a writer and a podcaster and television performer, I would not hire you to be my lawyer. Everything you say about him, followed by it doesn't mean he did it, just makes me think, well, it just makes me think what so many people thought when they saw the clip. But
wait, but Ethan, you do stories like this on the punter in the NFL where it looks bad initially, and then we actually learn more details about how this story came about, and then it becomes clear, oh wait, this is not what the news was at the time. And someone had told me, it's not what's reported, it's what's repeated. It's that like the narrative that gets out there at the start is just what the perception is going to be, that the carrying narrative on Malik Beasley is, look at this list of the CVS long receipt of all these debts that he had. And look at these plays. Oh, of course he's, as people say on Twitter, of course he's 100% guilty, but this is a complicated story. And this Moose character kind of flipped this whole story on its head. And it felt like to me at the end of reporting that episode, Ethan, this story is so much more complicated than me and Pablo and I initially believed.
I think that there will be more twists, more turns, and maybe we'll just get distracted because there's going to be, I don't know, another one of these scandals. Or maybe there won't. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, I'm of two minds with it. I just made the case for why this should never happen again. You've explained why they're almost making an example of Beasley, losing all these tens of millions of dollars and how that's going to scare guys off. But I'm of two minds. There's so much more money in the NBA than when we first started covering the league for the players. The TV money exploded, and you would think that they have reached escape velocity for doing stuff like this, for gambling on the games, because they're getting so much money, and they wouldn't want to put that kind of money at risk. But then the other part of me goes, well, maybe the new structure of the NBA, the CBA that was ratified in 2023, has made these scenarios more likely because for people who don't know, without getting into the nitty gritty of it all, the NBA effectively now has a salary cap. It doesn't technically, but it does in spirit and in essence. And that means the stars are getting the kinds of money that we never imagined that guys would ever get. We've got guys signing for just a little under $300 million for their contracts. And because they're pricing it more exactly under that salary cap, it's becoming a situation where there's no middle class. Stars are getting hundreds of millions of dollars, and then the other guys are getting squeezed. And so you have a scenario where it used to be, due to collective bargaining, more egalitarian, and the guys in a lineup are all getting paid relatively roughly the same amount of money. Now it's wildly different. So we're going to get guys who are making about $1 million playing alongside guys who are making 70 million. And you wonder if that inspires more of this kind of activity.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's one of the things that college sports is trying to figure out right now, Ethan, is should prop bets even be legal? Like, should prop bets even be offered? Prop bets. Okay. So what are prop bets? Prop bets are, you don't bet on the score. You bet on an individual stat line. So you can bet LeBron James under 25 points or LeBron James over 9.5 rebounds, Luka Doncic over 2.5 threes. And what it's been described to me as, like, should we even be offering those or even the unders? So think about it. Jonte Porter, the player that was federally banned or federally investigated and charged and pled guilty.
The guy who did it, yes.
The guy who did it and was banned for life by the NBA in March of last year. This guy was allegedly giving information to co-conspirators by saying, I'm going to basically pull myself out of these games, hammer the unders, and you will cash in your bets. And these co-conspirators allegedly were putting down $80,000 bets on their unders. And that would get, and parlaying them, levering them. So like it's points, rebounds, assists, threes, blocks, steals, all added together. And all those legs, once that eight leg parlay hits, they were standing to make over $1 million on that bet.
Yeah.
And some people look at this and they're like, why are we allowing under bets to be allowed? Like the $80,000 bet on Jonte Porter's under was flagged by the sports book. And they, according to the court documents, the guy who bet the $80,000 did not get the majority of his $1.2 million winning there because they had flagged it and they thought it was fishy. So I'm sympathetic to that idea. Like, I do think that it is a real blind spot for the NBA and other sports to have these prop bets that can be potentially manipulated on the unders. It's a lot harder to manipulate on the over, like getting over your rebounds or getting over, because that action you need to get the ball all the time. It's a lot easier to just sit out and be like, yeah, that I'm just not going to pass the ball. I'm going to get the under on the assist. Yeah. So I think that's interesting. But the Malik Beasley thing, to whether players will be incentivized or disincentivized to do this, Malik Beasley had a 90% pay cut from $16 million to $2 million in the year that this is being investigated, 2023-24 season. He was with the Milwaukee Bucks. He went under a 90% pay cut, Ethan. I don't care who you are. If you go from 16 million to 2 million, your budget is going to be very stressed. There's going to be a lot of tension in that house. And if you're going through a divorce, and if you're already going through debts, all of this stuff is why you can't just say these guys make millions of dollars. There's no
You're
way that they
making
will do this.
you're making a good point, but I just want to note that he was going through a divorce. It would seem to be because he was photographed with a then masked in COVID times Larsa Pippen. Yes, that would have been, I'm assuming, the former wife of Scottie Pippen, the older woman who dates NBA player after NBA player. That in our little sports world was the Coldplay concert of our lives. That's what I just want to note right there. No, you're making a good point, and you have these wild swings of how much you're making or not making that can inspire fraudulent behavior. We've got Aaron. We've got Aaron wanting to ask a question. Let's see if I successfully bring him on or I have Trace do it. Maybe I'll have Trace do it because I'm too stupid to figure this out. Aaron.
No one's stupid. You
Ah,
just
well.
are not yet fully capable.
Well, we will be, what's the word for it? Made smarter? That's not really
That's
the
it.
word for it by Aaron's
That's it.
comments. Tell us, what you got
No,
in your mind?
appreciate it. Great conversation today. I'm watching the women's Euros in the background right now, which is Switzerland Spain, which is great match in the quarterfinals. But the you bring up a great point around the financialization that's gone on with sports, the scale of it, right? And we've gone through this kind of phase where between, let's say, the 2015, 17, 18 world, right? That's kind of the vestiges of the old world.
Hmm.
And, where we just had, let's just say, our almost a medieval level repression on money from going to athletes outside of any normalized channels because of going all the way back to the Black Sox scandal and obviously in the last few decades NBA referee, college referees, on and on and on. And then we sort of blew the top off without much of a conversation.
Yep.
And I feel like it was the league's newer generation of managers that are much more private equity, financial engineering oriented, who are just sort of coming in and saying, like in the mortgage-backed security era, like let's just juice our returns, like
Yep.
we're going to get yield here, and by the way, like when you look at the timing, it's I don't believe in a lot of accidents or coincidences. I mean, they timed this after CBAs, like they kind of played the game so that they could get that initial outsized return.
Hmm.
And if it blew up, then they could just shut it down before the next CBA and say, oh well, no harm, no foul. It didn't blow up, so now that's getting incorporated in the new CBA, arguably. But the thing that's not happening, and this is my question with this transformation, the economics, where you're literally just adding another zero now, like onto everything at sports, just put one more zero, is that there isn't this sort of honest discussion about who these athletes are, including coaches, and let's just say putting people on more of a blended contract that might be 50% today's dollars, 50%
Hmm.
annuity dollars. I mean, just something a little more normalized to functional life.
Okay,
Like,
so here's something. Okay, because I was asking
that
about
makes
this. Like,
sense. I mean,
yeah,
does that?
no, because it's a bit of a taboo topic. I think that a lot of journalists would say that's paternalistic. You're talking about with this group of mostly black men are earning and how it's too much and they're going to go crazy with it, or something like that. The responses I got when asking if the explosion in money in the salaries was too much was interesting to me. I wrote about it. It's not too much for the guys who get it. The guys who get it are going to be fine.
Sure.
It's the jealousy and the turmoil and the discontent because it's now the salary cap, it's very zero sum, and it's not egalitarian. And
Of course
so
not.
that's the issue that they're facing more now. It's not the guys who get the money, it's the
But
guys
we
who
also
don't.
know when they do the modeling that 30 years later, 95% of them are either bankrupt, and that's not true with just basketball. It's across
Mm,
sports, right? I mean, there's just these guys just fall off a cliff, and we can't say, oh, these are anomalies, right?
yeah.
It's clear that if you go to the general population and dump 30 million bucks on a bunch of 20-year-olds, that they're likely to not have that money 30 years
Well,
later.
isn't it lottery winners too? I don't know the
Yep,
stat,
that's
but I
right.
feel like
That's
lottery
right.
winners are, as average Joe people as it
That's
gets,
right.
right? And they don't have financial advisors usually if they are, buying scratch
Well,
offs,
And
right?
NBA players, they often get taken advantage of and robbed by financial advisors
Right.
because they're easier marks.
Well, and
Tim
then there's these
Duncan.
practical
Yeah.
considerations like taxes that a lot of people just don't factor in. They just look at the top line number. So I have a cousin that won, not a big lottery, a small one, but it was still nice. It was better than not winning. And I worked him hard. This was years ago, and I just begged him. I said, please take the annuity. Just do it. Trust me. And he
Hmm.
did, and he got like basically like 35, 40 grand a year for like 18 years.
Beautiful.
And obviously his future wife thanked me. And every normal other person did. And he would have absolutely pissed all that money away. It's just
Yeah.
guaranteed. Um,
Well,
and it wasn't that much. I mean, comparatively, like, he could have bought a house. He would have maybe bought a house, but then probably bought too much of one and wouldn't have been able to pay the taxes and then a lien. And
yeah.
then it's how everyone melts down.
I can, as somebody who runs my own LLC and can no longer just check a box where they squirrel away some of my money, I can relate to sometimes not making the best decisions in regards to that. Aaron, good stuff. I think we've
Thank you.
got Jack with a
Thanks,
question,
Aaron.
and then we can move on to this topic of somebody is trying to bring back the long form profile at ESPN. But Jack, you're not muted right now. Hey man, what's going on? Oh, you are muted now. Jack is muted. Or am I muted?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so my question is, so I don't follow the Heat that closely. I live in South Florida, but what are the salary cap implications for a player getting busted for gambling? And could
Okay.
there be a situation where the team actually maybe leaks to the league that, hey, this player is under investigation for gambling, so that they can maybe save a few bucks on the salary cap?
So this is a great question, Jack.
Good question.
What's funny about this story that I just did for Pablo's show about Malik Beasley, the Detroit Pistons guy, was the Milwaukee Bucks fans who are like almost rooting for him to be guilty here because it would explain why he had an up and down season for Milwaukee 2 years ago, that he didn't shoot well. And some of these fans were like, oh, I hope he did it because that would explain why he was so terrible in the playoffs. And then people with the Miami Heat are saying, not the Heat, people within the Heat, but I'm saying fans of the Miami Heat. A lot of the responses to the story was, I hope Terry Rozier did it so he can get off my team, you know? And I'm like, whoa, this is such a weird thing of fandom, is like almost rooting for these guys to be criminals because it almost relieved them of rooting for them if they're not very good for your team.
Yeah,
And I
but
think
it feels like Jack might have inside information about a Heat, and I don't want
Oh,
to. I don't
no,
want to.
no.
If that,
I'm just saying. I'm more of a hockey fan, and I
okay.
just like there's a side there. With hockey, there's a really strict salary cap. So if one of your high paid guys gets a paper cut, you put him on LTIR,
Hmm.
and you can go above the salary cap. Now they're closing that loophole, but in as I understand it, the NBA does have a salary cap, right? So if you have a Terry Rozier who's, I mean, as far as I understand, sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, he's better than me, but
yeah, he's on the
am I
books for like
wrong?
$26 million next
Poor
season.
Terry
He's an
is
expiring.
poor Terry is watching this Zoom and just God.
So if
Blindside.
if I'm a Heat fan and he's underperforming his contract, do the Heat get any sort of salary cap relief if he does get suspended by the league?
I don't know. I think it probably comes down to the specific scenario and what's proven and when, and that is a great question.
That would
And
be
I
such a
don't.
conflict of interest. Like
Yeah.
a team who has a player who's underperforming, being like, yeah, I don't know. You might want to see this little piece of evidence over here. Like that, I don't think that would be the case. I think that would create a lot of like moral hazards there for NBA
Okay,
teams.
this is treacherous territory right now as I extemporaneously riff on this. But the thing you mentioned, Tom, about fans rooting for this, have you ever missed a flight and then I'm not saying part of you rooted for the plane to crash, but you think about how you'd be relieved if the plane crashed? This happened to me. This happened to me recently. We need the real ID to fly in most scenarios, and I flew Southwest out of the main terminal to Summer League, and you don't need a real ID to fly main terminal out. But I got a really cheap JSX flight, the little sort of fake private jet. I got a good rate, like a Southwest kind of price on the way back. You do need real ID, apparently, to fly that. I found that out on the tarmac that I could not board the plane, and I was dismayed. I felt ashamed telling my wife. I felt horrible. She was sad that I was not that I was gonna. I thought, well, the plane crashed though. I'd feel amazing. But then I thought, would I feel amazing? All those people would be dead. I guess I mean, obviously, I wouldn't press a button to do it. I don't know. Does anybody else out there think about how relieved they would be if some tragedy befell whatever? Tom's looking at me like I probably should not have aired that about myself. Is this like no one's watching this, right? This is just
No.
our private chat. Okay, good. Thank God. Thank God. Wonderful. Look, I'm
I
not rude. I would press the button for it not to happen. To be clear, I would save those people.
sure. This is the trolley problem. This is
The
if I could save one person or five people, like which am I going to choose the button that saves
yeah.
the one person? If it's a baby, would you do it?
Yeah.
Like what is the
But it's just about me and my embarrassment. It's all these people die, but I feel marginally less embarrassed. Which one? What do I choose? What do I pick? I don't
yeah.
know. Anyway.
Well, I think I'm reading this article from ESPN that if a player is incarcerated, if they're jailed, then it can be voided. The contract can be voided because if you cannot render your services for whatever reason, you're unable to play, then you can it's a breach of contract. But in this case, it's a great question. It's something
Yeah.
I'm going to track down. If Malik Beasley or if Terry Rozier is found guilty in time for his contract to still be active, would that void his contract and you could get cap space from that? Is an interesting thought.
I'm just gonna have a take. I don't think the team should save money. I think it incentivizes them to dig up dirt on their own players. And if you took a bet on a guy and the guy was a bum in some respect, then you should just eat that. I don't think you should be able to recoup your money in that sort of situation. That's that if I'm dictator, that's what I'm ruling, in addition to banning sports gambling outside of Las Vegas and Atlantic City. So let's move on to this article right here. There is an ambitious work, a work that shocked us because it reminded Tom and myself of the old days when we were hard scrabble NBA writers trying to get a feature in ESPN the magazine, trying to get that word count up. There was a Joel Embiid profile on ESPN.com called Joel Embiid Sees You. We could pull it up to just visually represent it to the people.
It's Kendrick Perkins. it's just this is just the state of the media that like a 13,000 Pulitzer Prize winning article just has a first take conversation with Kendrick Perkins as the photo at the top. That's good.
Oh my God. It's so good that they have to play that bit behind it by, I'm not sure how to pronounce Doten Akintoy. I hope that's correct, or at least near correct, close enough correct. 13,000 words, people. 13,000 words this was about Joel Embiid, who, no offense to Joel Embiid, famous player, former MVP, but not exactly an object of obsession outside of the Philadelphia metro area. I was very surprised by this. It felt like they were trying to bring something back that had gone away. And so, there was just so much there. I was fascinated by this as a piece of art. And I know you wanted to discuss it. I think we can discuss it from a variety of angles. It was trying to look at him as the human, the guy who had been through a lot of injuries, look at the world through his perspective, a lot of perhaps purple prose, but I don't want to be too critical because the guy really went for it. And damn, did he put in work for it. So it is an object of art to be analyzed and assessed. So go, Tom. What are your thoughts?
Well, what's interesting to me about this is kind of dovetails off of the previous conversation is how much money these guys are making, 60, $70,000 million dollars a year. Do they need us to tell their story if they're making 400, $500 million contracts?
If they want the story to be told well, I've already experienced them trying to tell it themselves, and what befalls them is what befalls all of us. We don't know what's interesting about ourselves. That story I just told about myself in the airplane, that might have been boring. I have no idea. Way better if somebody else was telling me and they could be the one to tell it. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't really know what's a good story when it's about ourselves. And so when Joel Embiid is opening up his house, the Philadelphia 76ers are opening up the offices to this reporter who spent a lot of time, months in reporting this story on the ground with Joel Embiid in his house where his kids are playing, his wife's upstairs getting ready for a party, and he's sitting down there and talking to Joel Embiid about his life, about his deepest insecurities and his deepest doubts. And I was reading this and I was just gobsmacked, Ethan, how rare it is to get these things. You know, we usually get it in the form of a podcast where Draymond or LeBron are talking, and it's the cameras are on and they're, having conversations with each other, fellow NBA players. But oftentimes the most interesting stuff is what a fly on the wall is perceiving of what's going on in your life and can observe, ooh, that's really interesting what you just said here. And I'm going to follow up on that thread and pull on it. And then it actually has a much more revealing scene. One of the scenes that Joel Embiid in this profile, who's made so much money in his life, and he's an MVP. He's a gold medal winner at the Olympics last summer. He has so much distrust in his life that one of the team doctors for the Philadelphia 76ers was visiting his apartment. It's a lavish apartment, beautiful place. But he noticed that there was like $20 bills scattered about on this table. And the doctor was like, "Hey, Joel, don't you think that's not the best idea? Don't you think someone coming through your apartment might steal the $20? And Joel Embiid says, "Yeah, I know." And the doctor is essentially like, "Oh, he's setting up traps for people in his life. If you steal the $20 bill from him, he knows who it was, and he can learn you're off the list. You failed the test." And Joel Embiid sets up these booby traps for people in his life that if they take the $20 bill, he knows I'm excommunicating you from my life. And this guy has millions of dollars. He's got all of the fame, and it just seems like a miserable life that he leads. And it's a very dark, the portrait that the reporter paints is that Joel Embiid is he just seems like he's miserable in his life right now. And I think that picture is very clear, is that he's got a lot of things that he's dealing with. His body is betraying him. The pressure cooker of being a star in the NBA and the media is all over him. That stuff we're not getting in a podcast with Draymond Green. I just don't think we're getting that. And I miss that. I miss that journalism that used to be more common, is that access. We no longer get that type of access. And this is very self-interested argument. Like, oh, we need more reporters getting access. But I do think these stories, I feel like people know Joel Embiid and what he's going through a lot more, and they sympathize and they root for this guy now a lot more because of this story.
And the problem is, the reason it doesn't happen, the reason why the Players Tribune or whatever self-curated work that the players do to talk about themselves always fails, is because it's so sanitized due to people like me. Because I read these 13,000 words and I came away not wanting my team, hypothetically, to sign Joel Embiid, thinking, oh my God, he seems miserable. Oh my God, he seems immature. Oh my God, is he never accountable for anything? And what was so interesting to me is you could feel, and I apologize if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize to the writer. I felt as though the writer was incredibly sympathetic while unsympathetic to the subject, that the writer was incredibly sympathetic to the subject while unknowingly portraying the subject as totally immature with a horrible attitude and a lack of professionalism. And I think that's one of the reasons why these guys don't want us around. Maybe they want to show some vulnerability, but even somebody who agrees with them or is sympathetic to them, just by relaying what's going on in their life, they're gonna invite a bunch of critics like myself to be all critical.
What do you make of the fact that last year I ran a study trying to track every NBA player, who their agent is and what agency they belong to? And you've done as much or more work on this subject than anybody, is CAA and Clutch and Excel and all of these agencies and how they pull the strings behind the scenes in the NBA. There is this fact that I uncovered, which is Joel Embiid is the only player in the NBA who does not have an agent.
Yeah.
And
Makes
in this
sense.
story, you learn that he is very tight with his money and he's mistrusting. And one of the reasons why he doesn't have an agent, I would presume, is because that's 2%, 4% of your paycheck
Yeah.
going to this representative. And by the way, Joel Embiid is probably not needing to negotiate too much in his contract negotiations when he's just coming off an MVP. But it is interesting in the psyche of a superstar like Joel Embiid, who for many years, we didn't know if he was ever going to play. And now is an MVP, but he doesn't even want an agent. And here we have the only like reported feature, magazine feature that I can recall. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he doesn't have an agent, because I think an agent would recognize, hey, look, man,
That's who yells at you the next day. That's our lives that we've experienced that you people don't see out there, is that we'll put out something interesting. I remember Sam Amick at The Athletic. He had something interesting. Got a ton of subscriptions for The Athletic. Everybody slapping him on the back at our company, and he looked miserable because his phone is ringing and ringing and ringing, and some agent is screaming to his ear about God knows what. I'm not saying that you guys should all cry for us, or we had it so tough when we were writing these sorts of stories, but that is the reality, that they are the guard dogs, and they don't allow you to see some of the things that you might see in that kind of article. And the article, again, maybe an agent would co-sign it because it just kept advancing the argument that he wasn't a bum, that as Embiid seemed very fixated on this idea of, I started this sport at age 16 and I've become this successful. There's no way it could be lazy. He keeps saying it, or it is a focus. And I just took away from it. I don't know if you're lazy, but you don't have the kind of commitment that a Steph Curry would have, which is fine. And you're just tremendously talented enough to, even though you've just regarded your own career almost glibly, they've brought in doctors to help you and you're not showing up to the meetings. I mean, it's worked out to a staggering degree, just not to the degree necessarily that Sixers fans have wanted.
He's the only MVP in NBA history to not make it to the conference finals. Is that a coincidence?
That's a stat.
So if you, like, Derrick Rose has made it, he went to the Eastern Conference Finals with the Chicago Bulls. Steve Nash went to the conference finals. Not both of them have not made it to the NBA finals, but Joel Embiid is the only NBA player to win an MVP but not get past the second round. And when you read this story, some of that might be coincidence, but I would also argue that he doesn't seem like a great leader. So Pablo Torre, incidentally enough, wrote a great story about the plight of 7-footers. Like, in their lives, they're born extremely tall and they can't get rid of that. So you're walking through life and you can't just like hide. Everyone sees you and it's like, oh, you're a 7-footer. You must have played in the NBA. And a lot of 7-footers, I think, if they had their druthers, they might not be NBA players. They might not love the game.
It's too much
They
money.
might not want to be a leader. But if Joel Embiid, he can't help it. He's that tall. He's that good at basketball. So it's not a role that I think a lot of people, it comes naturally, is being a leader, being a locker room guy that can like rally the troops, right? But that's the role of being an MVP, is that you got to be a team player. And if you're not a team player, it really shows and exposes in the playoffs, Ethan. You've covered championship teams. If that team isn't lockstep with each other, it's going to split at the seams. And I do think there might be something to that, why Joel Embiid in the playoffs hasn't been as successful as his regular season performances.
Yeah, you can learn to love something if you're getting paid enough money, I suppose, but it's just a difference between players who are relatively shorter and the taller guys who are just selected, that crazy selection pressure of you're 7 feet tall, you must do this. They're often very quirky. I don't know, if you had the experience of just walking around one of these guys out in the world, it's a crazy experience because it's like they're a celebrity except most of the people running up to them don't know who they are.
Yeah.
They just go, "Oh my God, you're somebody I need to know about." That's what it is. They run up and they go, "Do you play basketball? Are you famous?" And if you're walking around one of these NBA 7 footers, you're just walking down the street and they're just getting accosted again and again by randoms in this way. I don't know how we got on this particular topic. It's a
Well,
strange one, but
I think it's because Joel Embiid, it doesn't seem like he wants any of this fame. It doesn't seem like he wants any of this attention. And it's just, he's a prisoner of his own fame. And like, fame might be a prison in some sense where it's just like, he can't, like, everything he does is going to be scrutinized. And he's setting up traps quite literally with those $20 bills. But he's also, there's a section in the book, I mean, the book, Freudian slip there,
felt like it.
yeah. There's a section where he's trying to find the mole in his locker room that leaked a story to the press about, they basically, some player held him accountable in the locker room, was like, dude, you're late to meetings, you're late
Yeah,
to this, you
Tyrese
don't show up.
Maxey, his friend Tyrese Maxey ripped into him, and the details were leaked, I believe.
Yeah. And so
And
he wants to find out who it is, like who leaked it. And it just seems like a miserable life. I don't know. It just seems not.
it does, but it's also, I think, now we're getting deep into this article, and you guys can all read it if you want to, but it's a perfect example of the kind of belly aching, the millennial ennui. I guess Embiid is a millennial, not a Zoomer, that you've seen from some of these NBA players. He does remind me of Kevin Durant in many ways, where he tells that story of this rat who just talked about the meeting, but he doesn't deny anything that was said in the meeting about him not meeting his professional obligations. It's just belly aching about how somebody leaked it. There's no, I shouldn't have done that. There's no, well, yeah, I was kind of out of order. And I think that's also what befalls a lot of these guys. It's hard to feel sorry for people who are surrounded by yes men, but it's not a good way to go. As much as we might not like a lot of the criticism we get in our lives from people who know us and how it might not feel good when it happens, it is cleansing in a way. And it is good that we have an accurate sense of when we've hurt somebody's feelings, of when we haven't lived up to our obligations in the eyes of others. A lot of these guys at the top are deprived of it, and I think it makes them depressed and miserable because they're in this kind of fake world. I remember talking about it with Steve Kerr, Tom, and he was talking about how even it's a little weird for him and how sometimes he feels like that scene in The Sopranos was something that Kerr talked about when Tony is looking at all of
They're
his
at the poker
captains.
table and all his captains are laughing hysterically
They're
at him.
laughing
Yeah.
hysterically at his jokes, and
Yeah.
just the camera angle, you can see the falseness and the fraudulence, and how it sometimes, when you're at that height, it feels like that. And that is not a good headspace. It's something that we would all probably love for a day. Please, if you're out there, if you're listening to me, compliment me, falsely compliment me. I would love it. But I think over time, the cumulative effect of it happens to be fairly depressing for most regular people.
Yeah. The Malik Beasley story and the Joel Embiid story have this kind of through line, which is all this money might seem like you are immune to any sort of improprieties or depression or any sort of unhappiness or things. More money, more problems, like I think a lot of times we project, if I was making $2.7 million with the Milwaukee Bucks playing a game for a living, there's no way I would be tempted to bet on NBA games. If I was making
I
$60
mean,
million
I'm
dollars,
fairly confident that I wouldn't do that. I will say that. I will give myself some credit. I'll give myself some credit there. I
yeah,
don't think certain things I'm just too lazy to do. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not addicted to any drugs, at least now, knock on wood, is I've never done anything where I've woken up the next day and gone, how do I do that? How do I get that? And I feel like with a gambling scheme, Fairly similar. That's just morality aside. It's a lot of effort. Um, we got about 5 minutes left. Okay, so let's think. What are we gonna do? You also, I think, you had a few takes on just the nature of this business and how it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks that it's rare that we have an article. And I don't know. Do you want to complain? Do you want to vent? Do you have a cathartic point to make, Tom? I'm not setting you up well. By the way, any of you can ask a question if you want.
Yeah, I think Pablo, I think it's interesting that he's independent in the sense that he's not at one of these legacy
Mm,
media companies. And I think he's made this point before, which is these stories aren't getting reported or broken, at least. Like we're seeing this NFL collusion case turn into that the Players Union executive director is now resigned. And now there's story after
yeah.
story coming out from ESPN about all of these workplace issues and allegations and all this stuff. But Pablo was the one who broke the dam on that,
He
broke
did.
the story on the secret 61-page document that he had obtained, and then suddenly it started this waterfall of reports, and now he's out of a job. Um, it is interesting to see, and on one hand, look, legacy media is very strong. I mean, the Joel Embiid story is coming out from ESPN, right?
Yeah.
But notably, Joel Embiid doesn't have an agent. And I think you've done a lot of work on this, is the ties between agencies and legacy media, or like, the ability to control the narrative on a story through media because we all work for the same agency in some cases. It's a different world than when we entered into this business. We got into sports media around the same time, Ethan. 20 what?
Yeah. Like, I was around 2010 and you were
Yep.
at the Heat Index, which was for people who don't know, was an insane job for a young man to do. Tom was in his mid 20s, if I recall. The Heat were this controversial thing that got everybody angry when LeBron joined them in the decision. And it was a pressure cooker that you started out at.
It was yeah, it was 2010. I was
Yeah.
24. Yeah, so it was a crazy job. I was the first locker room I ever been in. To think of that, the first locker room I ever been in was the most crowded locker room in sports for media wise. It was insane. And so I was very much thrown into the fire for my first job, like full-time job at ESPN. But it was, I mean, you get a crash course in how to cover these stories and how to navigate this weird politics of sports media. But I just remember, Tim Frank over at the NBA PR pulling me aside before the preseason game. I think it was against the Celtics, preseason 2010 season, and him saying, "Tom, this is not normal. This is actually more credentials for this preseason game for the Miami Heat than we did for the NBA Finals."
Yeah.
And it was a different landscape, and there's a lot more money in it now, and the whole gambling aspect has completely changed the marketplace, and also what gets covered and what doesn't get covered.
I mean, there's a lot more money in it now, but not on the media side. That part is different. There's a lot more money on the athlete side of things. And what I love about that story of you covering that team, and maybe I shouldn't reveal this or I should reveal it in a vague way. I've definitely referenced it, and you've hit me up when I've referenced it because it's your story to tell. You started out covering that Heat team as a young man, and then when it all ended and LeBron left, it was revealed to you that underneath the surface of the locker room, and this winning, maybe dynastic Heat team, I'm not going to say everybody hated each other, but the tensions were tremendous, the fractures quite sharp, and then it was all revealed after it blew up in a way that they had held together when all of you guys were in that locker room and mostly successfully hid it from all of you. I love that story, as
Yeah,
dark as it
and
is.
I think for you, it was kind of this kind of window into what the Warriors were dealing with, was
Yeah.
everything. They were winning all these titles, but behind the scenes, there was a
Oh,
lot of palace
I
intrigue.
was more cynical because of you. I think. I think because you told me that story, I approached things in a particular way. So it's Tom's fault, Kevin Durant. It's not my fault. He told me to do it. But he was right. Tom was correct. He was correct when he told me that. Everybody was telling me it's fine. Kevin Durant's fine. Yeah, it's weird that he puts on a White Sox hat after victories and looks sour and doesn't say a positive thing about anybody. That is no bearing on whether he's going to re-sign here. Obviously incorrect, but now we're rehashing the past. I will end on one thing.
What?
Yes,
What
yes.
what did you want to know about this Pablo Torre story that we did, the Malik Beasley? Is there anything that interests you, like what we covered, what we didn't cover, what you're interested in?
There definitely are, but I'm moving on to a different Pablo Torre story,
Oh,
which is
yes.
the one you just mentioned about the players union collusion with the NFL. The head of the players union resigned on Thursday, Lloyd Howell Jr., and I believe the allegation, it's not necessarily about that. It's about billing the players union to strip clubs on some sort of credit card. And here's what I will say. I don't know anything about the details of this. I just know the allegations. I know he's resigned. It feels a bit like a limited hangout where this isn't the main reason, the main thing that was wrong. I believe that this is one of the few industries, Tom, the industry that we were in, the industry that he was in, that a strip club can be a business expense. And I don't want that to go away. That's all I'm saying.
You want to go to Magic City with a source and eat some wings and keep your eyes down, and it's all fine. It's a business expense. I'll tell you a funny story. When that story came out, my wife and I were texting with our friends in Miami. We used to live in Miami for 6 years, and we went out to dinner one time, and like me and my couple friends, and we went we went out to dinner, had some drinks, and then our Miami friends were like, "Let's go to 11." And 11 is a night, like a 24-hour nightclub slash strip club. And I had told my wife, I was like, it's just a bar. It's just a bar.
Mm,
We walk in, and there's no one stripping. It's just there was this woman who was like falling from like this Cirque du Soleil act from the ceiling. And Allison, my wife, was just like, wow, look at that. She's like, you know, rolling down this like fireman pole, and she's like, wow, this is cool. And then suddenly she takes her top off, and she's like, we are getting out of here right now. And she grabs my drink, she puts it on the bar, and she grabs my arm and leaves. And she's like, no, like, what did you do? And that's Miami, is like sometimes you're going out for drinks and then you end up at a strip club, and it might
yeah.
not even be aware to you, but I can tell you aware to the people involved that they're actually at a strip club. But the thing about this story though that was funny is like I think he very much knew that he was at a strip club, and then he told, it looks like, allegedly told his union reps
Mm,
to put it on their expense report. And it's like,
yeah.
yo, so you dump this off on someone else to file it on an expense report with the union, and it just seemed like he wanted to avoid any sort of trace
Hey,
to.
man. You come up with unconvincing defenses of Malik Beasley. I come up with unconvincing defenses of Lloyd Howell. It's just, I just felt the contrarian's urge right there, Tom. What can I say? This has been fantastic. What do you want to promote on the outro as we get on out of here?
TomTheFinder.com. Read my Substack, Malik Beasley story. There's a couple stories up right now about it. Also, Pablo Torre finds out the NBA scandal, the gambling scandal. Who is Moose is
Who
one of
is
the
Moose?
great chases I've ever had journalistically. Was really fun to work on that story with Amin and Pablo. So check that out on YouTube. And yeah, yahoosports.com for a lot of NBA writing and podcasts with KOC and Dan Devine. So go check it all
Okay.
out.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Trace. See ya.
Have a great week.